Hello, welcome to Hidden Gems. My name is Arden Thomas. I'm the Cincom Smalltalk product manager. Hidden Gems is where we show you capabilities of the product that may not be obvious, but we think you'll benefit from. So this Hidden Gems is about some programming tips, some ideas for simplifying your code. As always, any questions, comments, suggestions you have, please send them to myself, Arden Thomas, at athomas@cincom.com. So this is meant to be a quick but meaningful hidden gems, and I hope at least some of the tips will seem to be obvious. So it can be nothing, it can be everything, depending on your perspective. They may be obvious or they may be profound. It's kind of like a doctor saying to eat healthy and exercise, and then gives you some ideas and tips. And if you're not doing some of those things, the results can be profound. So sometimes we just need either a reminder or maybe some new ideas and perspective. And a lot of the power of Smalltalk is simpler, smaller, clearer code. Why? Well, less code is easier to understand. It's easier to maintain. One of my mantras is less is more. And this is one of those cases. So what are some ideas that we can use to simplify our code? Well, the first one, and actually this can be used for any language, not just Smalltalk, any language. It's a basic idea. Linear versus nested. Okay, here's an example of some nested code. A is less than B. If true, the result is 1. If false, C is less than D. If true, the result is 2. If false, so we have a nesting, and this can continue and continue. And it can be useful, but it may not be obvious, especially as you get nested deeper, or if the indentation is done incorrectly, or you need to make changes to it. It's not as clear as it could be. And imagine this. This is, I think, nesting 3 times. What if you're nesting 20 times, or it's very complex? So how can we make this linear? What is a result of basically the same thing? This is the example of linear code. And one of the things you want to do is, if you can say, okay, I'm done, just simply return the result. So A less than B, bail out with 1. You return the result immediately. You don't need to go continuing testing or have code that could cause problems. So again, nested versus linear. Always a good idea to do linear when you can. Often there are ways to change a nested example into something linear. And again, this idea, the basic concept, can be used no matter what language you are using. The next idea is unary messages when you can. Why? Because less is more. And even though Smalltalk is very simple, if you can make less syntax, the better. So what do we mean? Well, let's take a couple ideas. Let's say we pass in a collection and we want to get the first 2 from that collection. So we could copy from 1 to 2, or we could say first 2, probably better. And this is obviously a keyword message, first 2. But if we have a larger message, we'll probably need some things like parentheses, and then it gets more complex. Not terribly complex, but simpler is better. So what could we do to make that simpler? Well, if it's something where in your application or environment you need to get the first 2 a whole lot, well, simply write a unary method that says first 2. Here's what that might look like. First 2, return self first : 2. So instead of actually doing this, you simply send a unary message. This is an idea. If you're doing this a lot and you have a larger, more complex expression, having the unary message will benefit the clarity of your expression. What else? Well, this right here, we get this gives the first 5%. 5 divided by the collection size times 100 rounded, and the first, this gives 5%. What if we're doing things like that a lot and we want to simplify it? Well, you might do something like this. First 5%. So I have a 5%. So let's check out what this might look like. Here we have an array, and I'm saying give me the first 25%. Let's debug this. So first percent, I created this in number, and percent simply says myself times 0.01, which gives me the percent. In this case, 25, if I inspect this, 0.25. Okay, I've got that. Now the first, now wait a second, I'm giving a number less than 1. First does not handle that. Okay, I added this line so I can say first, and if it's a number between 0 and 1, it understands it's a percent and says take that, my size times n divided by 1. So this will give, let's see, my size, it should be, let's inspect the result. Okay, 25% of the alphabet size is 6. So I will call back into this self first, and I'm back in here saying, give me the first 6. And that gives me what I want. Let's see, let's inspect this. We get A through F. So again, a unary message here and some simplification and more capability here to simplify things. I suppose we could even, if we were doing all the time, getting 5%, and that was all over the place, we could write a unary message that did the first 5%. The last tip I want to give you is something called locality of reference. If you followed my screencasts, you may recall what that is. What we have, if we're getting a stock list app, typically by default, this would be lazy initialized, setting it here. Same for stock app, it would be lazy initialized. I changed that to just return it and put all the initialization in the initialize method. Why? Because it lets me come here to one place and see how everything is essentially wired together for my application. This is part of the domain master framework, if you recall, that I can basically link up a list to an application, and I could have a dozen things here all linked together. And if I had to look in 12 different places, by the time I got to the end, I would say, wait a second, what was the first thing again? But if I can go to one place and see how everything's put together, it's a lot easier to go to that one place and see it all at once. And that's the concept of locality of reference, one place to see it all. So I hope that's a reminder or gives you some new ideas to simplify your Smalltalk coding. Remember, less is more, easier to understand, easier to maintain, easier to change and have fewer bugs. Less is more. So linear versus nested. We showed nested, linear, much simpler, much clearer, much easier to change, fewer chance of introducing bugs. If your code is linear, unary examples, first 2. This is a complex expression. Unary messages are as simple as it gets in Smalltalk. So when we can use them or create them, if we're using them a lot, it probably doesn't make sense to create it if you have it one place. But if you're using it all the time and you can simplify a lot of your code, create it. Why not? And finally, locality of reference. If you have some setup work and you can put it in one place, it's an advantage rather than chasing around all over the place. One stop to see how everything is put together can be a big advantage. Again, any questions, comments, suggestions, please send them to myself, Arden Thomas, at athomas@cincom.com. Until next time, have a great time with Cincom Smalltalk. Thank you.